Welcome to the Empathy Edge podcast, Daniel Jahn, otherwise known as DJ. So excited to have this conversation with you about racial solidarity and the role empathy can play in bridging some of those divides. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. I'm always excited to talk about the topic. So
yeah,
thank you.
We had such a great pre-interview, which we actually should have recorded that because it was awesome. So much good stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you are a gym owner by day, and I feel like a racial solidarity leader and activist also by day and night. So tell us how you even got to this work and your personal story related to how you got to this work.
For sure. Yeah. So I was 18 years old and I was a senior in high school, and I did a workshop with a group called the People's Institute for Undoing Structural Racism. And I just kind of fell in love with it. I guess prelude to that, my parents have always been very heavily involved in the movement, for racial justice. So we kind of came up learning. My sister and I grew up learning, all about it, and so it was kind of a natural flow. And so I also played baseball, and so I got a scholarship to play at the University of Washington. And I went in, kind of thinking that, like, I started out as a physics and math double major. I'm thinking, okay, I like science, this history, sociology, racial justice stuff is fun, but I don't really know. And I'm just all about playing ball, right? So after my junior year, I was medically disqualified. I got injured, and at that point in time, I was almost done with a history degree and a sociology degree and a minor in physics. And at the time I got injured, they said, well, we really want you around. We want you to coach. And so I actually got hired as a strength and conditioning coach at the University of Washington. So that threw me into the world of anatomy, kinesics, and physiology and biomechanics. And it was great. It was I love training, I love coaching and working with athletes and whatnot. And so what I ended up doing is, because I've always had this passion for racial solidarity work and racial unity work, I would just volunteer, so I, served on several boards, and I did work in the community and did mentorship work, and just so on and on, I continued just helping in that arena. And I actually left the University of Washington in 2006 to start my own business, and it's been going for about 15 years now. So the gym by day, the racial unity work by day and night is a great way to describe it. But I'll leap forward a little bit, Maria, on this, because it's actually one of the reasons that I find myself here with you, is that this gym has given me a space to connect with people. And really understanding race is all about connection. And so, after George Floyd happened, everybody wanted to talk. And because it was, a natural fit for me, I loved it. I welcomed it. I invited it, in, and any opportunity I had, I chatted with people. And so I ended up doing a Instagram live with one of my clients who had like 1.5 million followers. And so there was like 100-some thousand people watched it. And so after that, she just kind of convinced me to start my own Instagram, saying, okay, well, people need to hear this more and get involved with this more and more engaged. And so I did. And so throughout 2020, I just had tons of conversations about race, and I ended up, I was involved in starting the diversity task force for the National Strength and Conditioning Association, which of course I'm a part of, and the National High School Strength Coaches Association started a unity committee that I was a part of as well. And so I'm not going to go beyond there, because there's more of this story that is tied into what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to leave it there, just as a bit of my background. But essentially, that's how I got
a teaser. And you're working now with Soul Focus Group, which is an organization that does facilitation of human solidarity workshops for organizations. Just for folks who can't see you right now, can you just tell us a little bit about your background and how your parents got into all this work as well?
Absolutely. Well, I am a kind of a walking symbol of racial unity. You know, my dad was white, and he just passed, so he was white, and my mom is black, and you know, both sides of my family were very supportive of everyone in it. You know, so we didn't have, you know, any racial issues at all.
Hmm.
The white side of my family actually were Quaker. We didn't. My dad, so my essentially my grandparents were, you know, continued in the Quaker faith. My dad didn't really participate actively, and my mom's side was Catholic. But everybody got along. Everybody, you know, like I said, there was really no racial issues at all. And I was just reading a book actually. Thomas Chatterton Williams wrote a book called Unlearning Race, and one of the things he mentions and that stuck with me was that there's a lot of Black folks in our country who spend their entire lives without ever really having true intimate love from white people, right? So especially when, you know, in our younger years, if you don't have any real true connection, you know, to white folks, there's you know, you grow up with certain ideas and resentments and thoughts about, you know, what white folks are to you and what this stuff all means, right? And so for me, as you know, someone who's Black and mixed, you know, I grew up with Black people and white people, and when my parents had lots of friends of all
Hmm.
kinds of nationalities,
Yeah. You had
that
it, it
loving
was
me. So
normalized for
I
you.
was
Yeah.
exactly, and it was so love of all was normalized. So that made
Hmm.
this really easy. So I know you mentioned the soul focus group, so I'm going to tie this together here real quick. Um, so as you know, a Black person during a time early after George Floyd, where there was a lot of talk about like, okay, as Black people, should we take on the learning for white folks? Should we like be answering all of these
Right.
questions? Some
And
people were saying
people have
no.
very definite opinions about that for
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
sure.
Some
Yeah.
people said no, some people said yes. I was always, you know, I am someone who believes that doors open and they close. And so there was a window of opportunity for us all when the newspapers decided to go down into Alabama and shed some light on the dogs and the fire hoses. And there has been another window and door that has opened since George Floyd. And so I think we need to take advantage of it. And I think that all of us need to be open to conversations
Hmm.
about race. And so I was someone who I was a huge proponent of it.
Hmm.
I said, you know what, we can't sit on the bench right now when people want to talk.
Do you think that that was from your background? Because I've spoken to other people of color who very, like I said, very adamantly are like, it's not our job
Mm-hmm.
to educate white people on our experience. Even though
Mm-hmm.
there are many white people with good intentions that are like, how else am I going to understand the experience unless I talk to people?
Mm-hmm.
And they can read books and they can, you know, find their own information. But
Mm-hmm.
what do you think gives you that perspective? Is it because of your upbringing of seeing the power of bringing those groups together, or what do you think makes that difference for you?
Yeah, I definitely think that's part of it. You know, race is really all about our perspectives and our experiences. You know, and I think the thing that I saw then and I continue to see even now is that people love to talk about racism, but they don't like to talk about race, and that's primarily because we don't learn about race. We learn about racism, but we do not understand or grow or learn about race. And so for it's, you know, most of America, not just white folks, most of America don't understand our racial history or our racial
Right.
disconnect
And I
or
want
the
to get
racial
into that.
divide.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
want to get into that because you've talked to me before about the fact that race is a human made concept. And so can you give us a little bit of that history lesson on that? Because I know you've studied it.
Yeah, it's completely a social construction, and
Mm-hmm.
it happened for one specific reason. And that reason was to divide us. Okay. And so normally when I'm having these conversations, Maria, I generally stop, you know, I stop at racism and I let, you know, inform folks that we, you know, we're putting the cart in front of the horse when we do that. We have to talk about race first, okay? Because 350 years ago, there was no race, and it really only became significant in 1705. So we're talking 315 years ago, right? So in the word white hadn't actually been written consistently until 1680 in the House of Burgesses, okay? And in 1676, there was a very significant event that happened. Well, I believe probably one of the most significant in our history. So essentially, we were all New Worlders, and there was a man named Nathaniel Bacon who led a revolt of slaves and also white indentured servants against the colonial elites in Virginia, William Berkeley. And so it was very successful. And so after that event, the colonial elites knew that they were going to have to do something to keep all of these really poor folks from overthrowing, throwing them off the land and killing them. And because essentially you had tons of slaves and you had tons of white indentured servants. And so what they decided to do was specifically designate European settlers, people that were coming into the country, as white, and African slaves or New World slaves essentially as black. There was three categories. Race was created for two, but there was three categories. Indigenous, what they called savages back then, of course, was one, and white and black were the other. So the purpose of creating race was actually to create what we call whiteness, which really operated as this club, which said to you, the indentured servants and European, really poor European settlers, mostly, Scots-Irish that were coming in, that said, look, you don't have a lot, but you at least you're not black. You have a little bit more than them.
Yeah, they created an us versus them dynamic.
They created an us versus them. So what happened was that immediately by creating race, right, since we only did it to create, in fact, a value proposition, white identity became explicitly tied to the inferiority of black and essentially black slaves. And that is what has been the most damaging part of what we have to deal with and clean up now, right? So what we're all living with it, and we're trying to figure it out, and we're trying to grasp it. But the difficult part is because as a society, we've never really gotten to the root of what's going on. We think honestly that it's slavery, because we had a system of race-based slavery here. We think that has caused everything else. Now, where slavery ties in, it's very important, is because it was the economic system that grew this nation. We are explicitly tied to race. There is no America if there is no race, and there is no America if there's no racism, right? Because racism followed race. They had to justify this, torturous, horrible system that grew wealth, right? That allowed us to even go to war with England. So there wouldn't be a country if there was no slavery. There wouldn't be slavery if there wasn't racism, and there wouldn't be racism if there was no race. Okay, so the psychology behind what it means is what has been so damaging to all of us, especially in this era where, essentially we are, let's say 1971 was like one of the last laws on the books to go that explicitly said, okay, you know what, black people are less than white folks. Right. So we're in this era that there's no real written laws and policies like there were following the civil rights movement that says, okay, you know what, well, black people, you are less than white people in so many ways. Right. Now, laws are administered in different ways, but all of it is tied to the idea, to this construct, that essentially white people are the best people. Right. And everyone else is kind of second in line, depending on who you are and how you look and how dark you are. And right. And so if we understand that the root of this was made up, we just pulled it out of thin air. Okay. There's no biological reference to, or the specificity of race at all. I mean, there's more racial, or there's more genetic diversity within race than across. We've seen that because of Ancestry.com and 23andMe, right? We know that it was just simply made up to keep us disconnected. Then we can start to think, okay, you know what? Now I can somewhat understand why it is that I am so confused, when somebody says, well, like all white people are racist, or somebody else says, well, I don't, then like, I don't get why, all, black people are they're killing each other, but they're talking about the police, or I don't, all of these, this disproportionality, is it, doesn't it really just come from work ethic? Why don't they just work harder? And why don't, I like everybody, and I never hurt anybody. And so why am, why are they blaming me? And it turns into an us versus them. And so I'm at the point now, and after 25 years of doing this and talking and being involved, that any conversation that has that essentially pits two perspectives against one another is not a conversation that I'm really interested in. It's not going to get us towards where we want to be, which I'm going to assume is to end racism. And for me, what ending racism is eradicating the value that is tied to race. So we still have racial differences. We still value our uniqueness and our difference, but we all see each other as Americans.
And we focus on what unites us. I love that you said that, DJ, because I think that's often the missing piece is we need to have more conversations. We need to have more programs. We need to have more this, that, the other. To what end? And I love that you've just defined that. The goal of all this is X. The goal is not to shame people. The goal is not to rehash. I mean, we have to educate and be aware, but I don't know if anyone has ever articulated what the goal is of why we're talking about this so much and why we need to talk about it so much and why we need anti-racism education and why I think people have put it into a moral camp of if they are racist, but don't admit that they are, they feel that their identity is being attacked. And they feel that just, maybe it's all going to be angry. It's all going to be blame. It's all going to be this. And no one ever articulates the way you just did. What are we doing all this for? Right.
Right.
And I think if we could make more people aware of that, you take the fear out of it for some people. Kind of for me, I am going to pass judgment. These crazy theories of replacement theory and all that kind of stuff. No one's trying to usurp anyone else. We're just trying to create unity and harmony. And I feel like the way you just described it, not tones it down, but de-escalates it a little bit to where you might actually be able to get people in the same room talking.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and like, I think in our first conversation, one of the things I asked you was like, if racism ends today and you step out of your house tomorrow, what does the world look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? What are the conversations? What are the behaviors? What are the interactions? How are laws administered? What are the political discussions like? What are investment conversations like? What does everything about our society look like? And if you are really serious about ending racism, like if we're just, one of the questions you asked at the beginning was like, okay, where are we in this? Today we are 2 years old.
As of this recording, we're honoring the second anniversary of George Floyd's murder. Right.
A lot of folks say we've made a lot of progress. A lot of folks say that what kind of progress really, have we made? Where are we? Right. So, for me, if we're really looking at like, okay, creating racial unity, creating equity and ending this, then like all of the work to hire all this DEI folks and all of these discussions and podcasts and all of this stuff, like, if it doesn't move us towards ending it,
Mm-hmm.
why are we doing it?
Exactly.
Right?
And I think people can't picture.
Why are we doing it?
Yeah. And people can't picture, I don't think we've thought through enough what you just said.
Yeah.
What does it look like? What
Visualize
does it feel like it?
Yeah, we got to visualize it. We do. And for me, what it is, like I mentioned to you, is that I can step into a world and move throughout a society in which my skin color, my hair texture, and my eye color bears no value. Okay, it's different. Yes, we lots of people say, well, we'll find differences. We're tribal by nature. Yeah, there will be differences. But guess what? Let's take race out of it then. I mean, let's actually, you know what? No, I'm sorry. There are going to be differences, but we can choose how to see those differences, right? So our differences are unique and they're valuable. We are all Americans. We're here to create a stronger society. Okay. What we can also do at the same time is say, because someone looks different than I do, that doesn't mean they are less than me or better than me. We can hold two thoughts in our head at the same time.
Yeah.
We are
both and
creatures. Yes, we can do that.
Completely.
Right?
Completely.
And so there's something else that I want to bring up that you mentioned too, that just a bit ago, I don't remember exactly the context, but you said if somebody, is a racist, or they don't, maybe they aren't, or they don't know they are, or they're trying not to. So this is one word that I think is actually very problematic for us. And we either need to break it all the way down, or we just need to get rid of it. Okay, because what I have not ever been privy to is someone defining what a racist is. Okay, is that just someone who doesn't like somebody because of their race? Is it somebody who one time went to a Klan rally, and then, is it somebody who was in the Klan 30 years and then denounced and then has been working for racial justice for 10 years? Is it someone who votes for policies that are damaging to communities of color? What is it exactly?
Right. Or is it just someone who's mean to people of color? Is it someone who is nice to people of color to their face, but not when they're not around? Like, yeah, there's so many, we've never defined that.
And it's not helpful.
No.
It's not. If where we're trying to go is to build racial unity and American racial solidarity, right, and end the value proposition tied to race, okay, it just trying to point out and find who the racists are, or trying to distance yourself from the word, or you know what I mean, like, or I felt like every time that and George Floyd, I mean, like, okay, he's one of many, many, many incidents since I've been really heavily involved in this work in the last 20 some years, in which I've watched our society do two things. One is some doors get opened, and the other is people run from the idea of race and racism and say, see, that's what racism is. That's not me. I'm not that. I'm not tied to that. Right? It's like, there's this weird, but it always comes back to disconnection, Maria. I mean, it really does. I mean, racism so effectively disconnects us, right? It's told white people they can only be tall when Black people are on their knees. Okay. It's told Black people, you're never going to be as good as white folks. And I'm just using I'm using black and white now, because when we created race, it was created for Black and white. And so, the concept of Asian as a race is stupid. Okay. The concept of, Mexican as a race, or Latino as a race, right? It was designed for skin color, eye texture, or eye color and hair texture, right? So we often confuse ethnic origin and nationality and race with each other, which makes people more confused. Right? But racism is extremely complex. It's I think it's the most complex domestic issue we have. Is
there ever a vision for you that if we got to a world where, like you said, we walk out our door, we wake up one day and there is no racism? are we not even using that word anymore?
Well, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Right. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily mean anything. Now, that we're not going to, race is it's there, right? It's part of who we are. We are who we are because of race. It is America's export to the world, right? This is our biggest impact. We are who we are because of race. So it's not like it's just going to go away. Okay. But maybe we find different terms. Maybe we internalize the meaning behind it differently, which is kind of what I hope happens, right? So skin color, hair texture, eye colors, the differences are there, but as long as we interact and behave and reprogram our subconscious and our conditioning to understand that race really means nothing, we just made it up, then we can live in a society where I think that this, so here's an interesting thing that I learned through the Soul Focus group, actually, what I can talk more about in a minute, but which is that, we like to talk about systems and institutions all the time. Racism and structural racism, institutional racism, we like to bring that up. But who makes up systems and institutions? We do. So the reason why all of these laws and the way systems operate the way they do is because people brought the psychology of race, they brought their social conditioning into their arena of work, whether that be political or corporate or nonprofit, it doesn't matter. We're just taking who we are and our conditioning with us everywhere we go. So if we can end and heal from the racism within us, right? And that's everybody. Okay, that's all people in this society. If we can heal, and work on racism within us, then we can start to go out to society and to the system, the schools, and the corporations and the banks and the criminal justice system. We got to start with ourselves.
Well, and that's something we dug into. Really, was this power of looking at, obviously looking inward and looking for what, I think we had talked about the fact that a lot of it is about fear, about lack of love, about insecurity, that people are embracing these human-made constructs because it serves them. So what's an example of, or even just generally, what is the inner work that people need to do? And is it different if you're Black versus white?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
The answer might be no, I don't know, but
no, the answer is absolutely, the answer is absolutely yes. The work that we need to do is based on our racial perspective, right? Okay. So I'll tell you about me. So just briefly, I was doing all these discussions. I'll take it back for a second. In 2020, I get to the end of 2020 and something's not sitting right with me. I can't figure out what is going on. I'm having tons of conversations, but something is not really clicking, and I'm realizing that I don't feel like I am participating in something that will create transformational change. And one of the main reasons was because all of the conversations I was having with primarily white folks was that essentially tied them to feeling for someone else. So essentially it was that, like, your racism, this really sucks, and like, man, I want to do something about it. But ingrained in them, that meant they want to do something for people of color, not for themselves. And I couldn't put a word on it yet. I didn't quite know. But what ended up happening is in January of 2021, I got connected through this Instagram deal to the Soul Focus group. And I got to sit in on a workshop, and they do a 4 to 5 part, workshop. And this particular workshop was part 2, and it was called Healing from Racism. And when I heard the title, I'm like, okay, well, that must be for people of color. Like, I don't know, like, people of color, people have been hurt by somehow, whether, some action or something, right? I didn't know.
People who quote unquote were victims of racism.
Quote unquote victims, yes. And it was a completely different experience for me sitting in on it. And it forced me to, like, really take a look at how I've defined myself and how my parents might have defined themselves and how I was helping educate my children based on like essentially living in a society, swimming in this ocean, which essentially says white folks are better than black folks. And so I started to deconstruct, and I went deeper and deeper, and I got more involved with them. But the thing for me was like, okay, I really need to take a look at what's going on with me. And, before I go out here and tell everybody else how to do this. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I found was that like, my any conversation that I would have started with this initial thought that like, well, I'm going to be judged based on my intellect and based on my ability to appear, capable, and and how confident I am, how smart I am. And I know that because as a black man, I mean, that's my experience, and it shaped my conversations, and it shaped my behavior, and it shaped my energy, and
Mm-hmm.
and so I never really thought deep enough about how big a part of my life that had been. How many times
You were just used to doing it.
I was just used to doing it.
Yeah,
right?
I think.
So that,
and sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I just want to add, because this is so important, and not that it's equated, but oppression of any kind. I think there's so many women that end up realizing that when they get older and more confident in their careers, they start realizing that much of their decision making, so much of what they brought to work or how they acted at work was through a lens of, I have to make sure that as a woman, I am perceived or not perceived a certain way. And this is the thing that I think is true of any marginalized group as related to white males who are, we're not saying you are all horrible people, but you are just not used to having to deal with that inner narrative at any point in your life, where it's you have to wonder how you're showing up as a white man.
Yeah, but I will pause you on that one. So white men have their own difficulties,
of course,
right? And one of them we are seeing in the last, we're seeing the result of in the last 20 years or so with the rise of white male suicide.
Yes,
and white male suicide, age 40 to 60, right? Because we've all been lied to. We have been duped. Okay, we have been led to believe that white men are essentially the people who run and should run, and who have our country and our society, and who have the best judgment, and they should be the lawyers and the politicians and the CEOs, and just because that's
and that hurts those people too.
It absolutely does.
That expectation. I think that's you getting to that point of like, everyone is healing from this.
Yeah. We're all victim to this. None of us created this. Right? This was created hundreds of years before any of us were born, before our parents were born, hundreds of years before our grandparents were born, right? We're all living in it, okay? And all of us do have healing to do. Yes, white men have been totally disconnected and cut off from people of color because of the value proposition put on our ancestors. It has put them in a position, like I said earlier, that in which they're expected to be tall because everyone else can only be, when everyone else is on their knees. Okay. And so we are all playing a role. Whiteness is something that was done to people, and blackness was something that was done to people, right? It's not something that was done for us. It was done to us in order to disconnect us. And so I think when we're talking about these issues, we always have to remember that race it's really our only connector. It's not the disconnector. It's actually the connector. It was something done to all of us in a different way, for one reason, right? To make money. It was to make money. Okay.
Absolutely.
And so I didn't mean to cut you off, Maria, but to take it back to what ended up happening, I just reconstructing my vision of myself, how I went about in the world, and the conversations that I was having helped lead me, to a place in which I started to see things in a different way. And so I think for me, the most important thing that people need to do, like right away, is to say, how has racism harmed me? and how can I heal from that? How has racism harmed me, and how can I heal from that?
And when you had that breakthrough, did things start to align? Did you realize that that was the missing piece for you?
Yeah, well, it definitely set me on a path of learning more. I thought I had this stuff figured out.
Right. I know, but you said you always sort of felt like something didn't quite jive for you,
Well,
didn't quite resonate.
at the end of 2020,
Right.
but all the way up through that, until the fall of 2020, I was like, I kind of have this stuff figured out. I know the story, I know our history, I know, about implicit bias, and I know about, our about structural racism, and I know about our criminal justice system. So I kind of have it figured out. It was all about teaching. Honestly, it was like mostly about teaching white people about the perspectives of people of color, and I thought that was it, but it's not. And that's where I shifted my learning, and it became much more so. And I'm so like glad that the podcast is about empathy, because really this is about our connection to each other. And it's about us, and we mentioned the last time we talked, these acts of hate come because of deep feelings of insecurity, right? And lack of love and neglect and things that have to do with who we are as beings. It's the same reason why racism has just been able to be so rampant, because we're so mentally unhealthy in our society right now. We don't feel good about ourselves. So any anybody who's different from me must be less than me somehow, right? Because
they're trying to take something from me.
They're trying to take something from me because I'm constantly trying to justify my own being and who I am, and my my strength and my my intellect, all of that. It starts with me.
Right. And I love, as you were talking, I just got this lovely image of, wouldn't it be great, instead of all of these issues, like there's a group of us that, as an example, at my son's school, are trying to build like an equity and inclusion group. And it's already being, just from trying to gauge if there was interest, there was all sorts of fear mongering and all sorts of like, oh, this means they're going to bring CRT to the school and blah, 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 blah. And like, what a different image I get from hearing you describe the mutual healing, that it's not walking into a room ready for a confrontation. It's almost like everyone putting their arms around each other and going, we have all suffered from this. We are not coming into this group or into this room to shame or blame or whatever. We're gonna become more aware of what's been done to all of us. And I just, as you were talking, I just got this image of like, what a more thriving conversation you have if you're envisioning it that way, where you're all putting your arms around each other and you're walking into that room together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then maybe those, if we had more of that talk and more of that understanding, we could bring people along, even if they don't think they need healing, but they just know, I'm going to get into the room because I know this isn't going to be an attack on me. And they might uncover their own epiphanies if we can at least get them in the room. So just, I love that. And one of the person that connected us, the wonderful Whitney Keys, talked about the fact that why we needed to talk was because you do bring this very joyful aspect to this very unifying aspect to this conversation. And I think I just felt it in what you described and how you described it.
For sure. Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, we have this incredible opportunity right now to really connect with each other and grow from each other and create the kind of society in which we really genuinely all thrive based on, the work we put in and who we can become. You know what I mean? And it's really going to take all of us, and it's going to take us, looking inside ourselves and realizing, how, like I said, how we've been harmed and how we can grow, and being honest with ourselves. I mean, you mentioned that, CRT, and that really, the fear of CRT really comes from, it started out with the idea that somehow all white people are racist, right? Or that the idea that all white people really, no, let me scoot back. It's that all white people are bad. So what a lot of people heard is that like all white people are bad, even though they knew nothing about critical race theory or why it was created. Right.
Most of the people that hate it don't understand it. So
and so then that became I am bad. So as soon as it's I am bad, I'm totally rejecting anything that has to do with it.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is all tied to our insecurity and how we feel about each other and how we feel about ourselves.
Why it requires the healing.
And why it requires healing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Well, DJ, we're going to have many more talks, I'm sure, but thank you so much for sharing this history lesson and your insights and your perspectives on this. Folks can probably get in touch with you for workshops or speaking on this topic as well, and the joyful aspect that you bring to it. But where's the best place for people to connect with you and learn more?
Yeah, no, for sure. So the Instagram that I started, of course, and still like to post stuff on is a good one. That's just my name at Daniel _Jahn.
Jahn.
Jahn. Yes. It's German.
I love it.
And then also, I highly encourage people to look at the Soul Focus Group's website and connect. If whether or not you're a part of an organization or a business, there's tons of I think there's an online curriculum now. There's more that will be available for folks just to tap into. It's a breath of fresh air. I'll tell you. It's a breath of fresh air, and it's a solution focused workshops and ideas and language around this topic that everybody can buy into, really.
I love it. And we will have their link in the show notes as well. So
excellent.
Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Thank you for sharing your story with us today. And thank you for sharing your insights as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm always, like I said, I'm always up to talk, and we can chat again whenever.
For sure. We might have to have you on again. And thank you everyone for listening to another episode of the Empathy Edge podcast. If you loved it, please share it with a colleague or a friend, and don't forget to rate and review. We love that. And until next time, remember that cash flow, creativity, and compassion and unity are not mutually exclusive. Take care and be kind.